From WFIU in Bloomington, Indiana, I'm Kate Young, and this is Earth Eats.
The goal with the collective is to bridge that gap, so then there is a lot more equity and a lot more opportunity, because these coffees are incredible, and most of the time when they're coming from people with marginalized identities, those people are ensuring that they're honoring the farmers as well, so the farmers are then getting equitable pay. And so it's creating that throughout the supply chain.
This week on the show, we're talking coffee with Korie Griggs. We learn about the Color of Coffee Collective, working to support equitable access in the world of specialty coffee. She also has a message about slowing down and taking time to smell the coffee. Plus a story from Harvest Public Media about the latest superfruit. All that's just ahead. Stay with us. Support for Earth Eats comes from Maller-Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Maller-Grodner Attorneys, understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. On the web at lawmg.com. Thanks for tuning into Earth Eats. I'm Kate Young.
You know, I'm going to miss these times.
Are you going to get sentimental on me?
With General Foods International Coffees.
If you're old enough to remember that TV ad campaign from the 1980s, then you might be familiar with the first wave of coffee. People in the coffee world have identified 3 waves of coffee consumption in the United States. The first wave peaked in the 1950s when coffee became ubiquitous. Households from all walks of life had a percolator in their kitchen, later replaced by a Mr. Coffee-style drip machine. Think Folgers and Maxwell House and celebrating the moments of your life with General Foods International coffees, which were basically metal tins of flavored instant coffee with built-in cream and sugar. I myself came of age in the second wave of coffee. I was 20 years old the first time I walked into a downtown coffee shop while visiting Boulder, Colorado. The aroma of freshly roasted coffee filled the room, and the grating sounds of whole beans grinding and espresso machines whizzing filled my ears. Second wave coffee is characterized by dark roasted coffee served in giant coffee cups, sometimes with flavored Italian syrups. Starbucks was born in this age, and all of the copycats and independent coffee shops in cities and towns across the country. Coffee shops became known as a third place, a space outside of home and work to meet friends, to hang out, to study, or even attend a poetry reading or a book club. That third place status of the coffee shop has stayed with us in what is known as the third wave for coffee, starting around the 2010s. What has changed is the coffee itself. In this stage, there's more focus on the origin of the coffee and how the beans are processed and roasted. Lighter roasts are trending, the giant cups are out, latte art is in, and pour-overs are common at most shops. We'll hear more about that brewing method later in the show. Our guest today is connected to some of the hottest trends in specialty coffee. And yet, in another sense, she's calling for a return to that sentiment expressed in those cheesy ads.
Celebrate the moments of your life.
My name is Korie K.P. Griggs. I use pronouns she, her, and I am a coffee lover, fanatic, and writer, artist, activist.
To start out with, I would just like to know, I would like to hear in your words, what is the Color of Coffee Collective?
The Color of Coffee Collective is a collective of marginalized people within specialty coffee. When I say specialty coffee, it's, outside the scope of when we think about Starbucks or like the big names. Specialty is more like when you think about your local coffee shops, your roasters, your baristas, everything like that. And we create educational opportunities within this industry. What that looks like is if a person holds a marginalized identity within the specialty coffee industry and they need more support or they need more education, sometimes it goes all the way to they don't really know how to interact with their community to make sure that they get everybody involved in that area. We kind of come in and whatever the needs are, we develop a curriculum around those needs. And so we do that all over the nation. We're specifically founded out of Houston, Texas. So a lot of our like brew ups or the smaller get-togethers or the smaller education opportunities that we do happen there. And then every year we do a symposium, and that is our big event. So we have people come in from all over the world. We have panels so that we can get the full scope of what it looks like to create equity from seed to cup. So we talk to farmers, we talk to producers, we talk to roasters, we talk to literally every person along the supply chain. And so we just create those educational opportunities centered around equity.
Is it something where a coffee shop, like say somebody starts a business and then they might have you come in like as a consultant almost?
Yeah. So whether it's a shop that is just opening, getting ready to open, has been open for a while, all of those we cover. A lot of times there's a lack of barista training that occurs where it's like, okay, how can you actually set up your entire staff for success? And so we come in and we have people that are incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to brew methods, latte art, dialing in espresso, like literally all the technical things surrounding that to ensure that when people walk through that door, they're getting the best experience from customer service to taste to experience everything.
I guess to step back a little bit is how did you yourself get into this world? How did you find yourself in the coffee world?
I was a director of marketing in like corporate America for about 6 years. And I was trying to figure out how I could leave that setting and pursue my art full time. But also I wasn't making enough income from my art at the time. So I was like, okay, what can float me through? And when I was like working my office job, 2 days a week, I'd work remotely. And I always went to this one coffee shop. And so I was just sitting at the bar one day and I was like, hey, could I work here? And they all kind of laughed because they were like, you come here to work like on your job, you know? And I was like, no, I'm trying to pursue my own stuff, but I love coffee. But I just like, all I really knew was like, I consumed a lot of it. So it was like, okay, what does it look like to make it, to be immersed in it? And that was in 2018. Yeah, so 2018. And I started working behind the bar and just like fell in love with the art of just making coffee. And the specific shop that I was at was in Carmel, Indiana, and it's Indie Coffee Roasters. They are really, really centered on education. So even if you're a customer there and you want to know anything, like they'll walk you through the steps. They'll teach you how to make pour overs. Anything you want to know, they'll let you know. So working there, I was just fully immersed and fell in love. And I was like, oh my gosh, like coffee comes from people that look like me. Coffee is developed and cultivated and cared for and farmed. And so I just got really into the history of it and I fell in love because I was like, well, I'm drinking it all the time anyway. So let me like honor it as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people enjoy drinking it, but wouldn't necessarily dive into all of that background information.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it just stirred a passion or something.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I'm such an artist, and to be able to make something that I love with my own hands fully tied into everything that I love.
So when you said that they will show you how to make a pour over, or show you how to do whatever, you mean like they will do that for customers? Like
yeah. They are also a roaster. So they roast their own beans, and that's what they sell. That's what they serve. And they offer cupping classes.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like wine tasting, but with coffee. You know, you learn how to brew it properly, how to ensure you get the most flavor out of it. You can sit at the bar and get the full experience from espresso, lattes, cortados, cappuccinos, pour overs, everything.
From there, where did you go?
I stayed in that as a barista role until I think 2020. And then I took a manager role at a different coffee shop. And then the pandemic hit and I was just like, well, this isn't sustainable. So, and at that time, like my art and my writing had kind of taken off. So I really had to grapple with, am I going to commit to figuring out how to stay in this industry as a like customer facing role, or step back and use my writing skills, everything like that because I really just wanted to tell stories within the coffee industry. I wanted to really be a voice to create that education and kind of bridge the gap from farm to table. Like a lot of times with anything that we're consuming, we're not thinking about where it comes from or like the people it comes from. And with coffee, most of the time, the farms that it's coming from, those are family farms. Like those are families that have cultivated that land for years and years and years. And so I had been submitting my art to this publication called Coffee People Zine. And the founder and editor reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in taking over an issue as like the executive editor, designing, doing everything for it. And it was my opportunity to just like tell those stories in essentially a book form. So I did that. And then I stayed on as like a managing editor for a few more issues and just really fell even more in love with telling stories of roasters from all over the nation that had never been highlighted before. So I got to interview them, and that kind of led to, I created just like a social media presence from that, just connecting with shops all over, farmers, producers, roasters, and even baristas. And from there, Keith, the founder of the Color of Coffee Collective, reached out to me and was like, hey, this is my vision. I want to basically create a collective that can support all of these people that you're featuring, all of these stories. We just have been running with it ever since, just trying to get the word out to people and really create as much support as possible within this industry.
And the support is specifically directed towards marginalized communities or people who might otherwise not find themselves in the coffee industry or might face some barriers. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
The specialty coffee industry has experienced a lot of gatekeeping in a lot of ways. I know that even when I entered into the industry, I wasn't seeing people that looked like me. I wasn't seeing other Black women. I wasn't seeing other, even Black men, like even in barista roles. So because I wasn't seeing them in barista roles, I definitely wasn't seeing them as roasters. Like roasters was portrayed to me that it's like this elite position within coffee. So it just takes a lot to even be able to step into that role. And that was strange to me because I'm the type of person, if I want to learn something, I'll just dive headfirst into it and figure it out. So I would start kind of like coffee shop hopping around Indianapolis, even down here in Bloomington. And I realized like, okay, it's a predominantly white industry, but I didn't understand that, especially when it's an industry that all of the product comes from Black and brown people. So there was a huge disconnect there. And the more I started reaching out and just trying to find people in different cities, places, everything, I was like, okay, there are people. It's just that their voices aren't really being heard. So what does it look like to enhance that and make sure that that can be heard? And a lot of it was they just didn't have adequate support. And because they didn't have adequate support, they also didn't have adequate education in it. So while they're learning how to roast, which is incredible in itself, they may not have the proper equipment to enhance that experience, to get more support. So, it's just definitely a display of the differences, more or less, of people in marginalized positions in everyday life. That is happening in the coffee industry as well. So the goal with the collective is to bridge that gap. So then there is a lot more equity and a lot more opportunity because these coffees are incredible. And most of the time when they're coming from people with marginalized identities, those people are ensuring that they're honoring the farmers as well. So the farmers are then getting equitable pay. And so it's creating that throughout the supply chain.
So what does the collective look like now? And like, how do you interface with the people in the industry?
We had our first ever symposium last year. It brought people from all over the world. And because of that, last year was more centered on hearing the needs. And this year is applying what we heard as a need and giving that to the people. So this year is more centered on education, where we have breakout sessions, breakout rooms centered on, one is like branding in coffee, how to make sure you're branding your business. One's financial literacy. I'm doing self-care in coffee. How are you actually caring for yourself while also experiencing your business? We have roasting. We have every need we heard. We're like, okay, we already know somebody that's well-versed in that. Let's plug them in, also give them an opportunity to have their voice heard even more, teach a class, teach it to people who want to absorb knowledge, then take it to their people. I mean, it's a collective. You've got people that come in, we learn from each other, then we take what we learn and we go out to our communities. And because while we're founded in Houston, like I'm obviously here in Indiana, one of our team members is in Louisville, Kentucky. 3 of them, I believe, are in Houston. Another one's in Dallas. So, we're always on Zoom meetings saying like, hey, I just realized like this is a need in my community. Actually, okay, we're now all like retaining that those are needs in multiple communities. And how do we take that need and create opportunity for it? So the symposium really does that. And then we do what are called brew ups, where we go into a shop, let's say, if the shop is struggling, or even if like the community, they just want more community involvement, we do a brew up where we bring coffees from Black and brown roasters for people to try. So then that creates, oh, I loved this coffee. How do I get that? Okay, so you're creating support. It's creating this domino effect of education and support. I'm the director of operations. Anytime I go into a shop, whether I'm traveling or whether I'm here locally, I'm asking, how's it going for you guys? Actually, it doesn't matter if it's a marginalized identity shop or not, because typically they're still serving people of marginalized identities, hopefully. Then there could be a disconnect there. It's like, okay, what does the community involvement look like? What does your overhead look like? Does your profit make sense based on how you're getting from your producer? At the end of the day, it's really creating connections that cultivate educating and support and equity.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a sense of like what it looks like. Like you're having a symposium where you're gathering people, but then you're also kind of at times sending someone from the collective to.
And it can look like if a shop reaches out to us directly, hey, these are my needs, this is what I'm struggling with. Okay, awesome. Then it would probably make best sense to send out, let's say Nikki, because Nikki's great with barista training. Let's send her out to make sure that they can do that, or to get more of a feel of what those needs really are. And sometimes it's a matter of a shop might not know what they need, but they know something's not working, And so it's like, okay, let us come in and just see what we can do to help you. We have a nonprofit side, it's Coffee with Keith. And so the goal of that is to ensure that it's accessible for these. Because obviously, if you're already struggling, you aren't going to have the resources to then pay a consulting team to come in. So we do a lot of, through doing the symposium, everything like that, we're able to show fully what we do in order to raise funds through the nonprofit to then use those to support shops that maybe just don't have the resources to call on us for, hey, I need to hire you. We never want it to be a thing where someone doesn't ask for help just because they don't feel they have the resources to do so, which is really why we started in the first place. It's like, okay, there's clearly a need. There's a lack of support. Let's figure out how we can do that.
Can you say more about what sorts of issues you're interested in exploring or in addressing in the coffee, specialty coffee world?
Right now, I am super, super passionate about self-care in coffee. And what that looks like for me is a lot of times, when you're in especially a customer-facing role in coffee, whether it's barista, sometimes a roaster, you can get so physically exhausted. This is physical labor that we're doing. And a lot of times in those roles, there's not an opportunity for health insurance. And that's just the norm with specialty shops. They just don't have the income to provide those types of benefits. So what does it look like to stand on your feet all day, also engage with people very intentionally? So you're using your physical energy, you're using your mental energy and your emotional energy, baristas and bartenders have a lot in common. They're getting the, especially if you have regulars, they're coming in and they're just dumping like, hey, yeah, I need my coffee because this is how my day is going. And it's a beautiful thing, but I'm very passionate about what does it look like when you go home, and what does it look like to actually be cared for and then have the resources to care for yourself. So I create a lot of literature and curriculum based on like, hey, if you're feeling like this, here are some tools you can use to care for yourself in those times, and also how to advocate for yourself when you step into your shop. A lot of times I think when we think of self-care, people are like, oh yeah, like I took a nice hot bath. And it's like, yes, also do that. Like take care and, get a good soak in. But also, what does it look like to have that community care aspect? So that's my biggest passion just in life too. I'm just like, how are we caring for ourselves?
Korie talked about how the ritual of coffee making figures into her own self-care. Making coffee is the first thing she does in the morning. She usually makes a pour-over, which is a simple method of brewing that involves a device to hold the coffee filter with a measure of coffee grounds and hot water poured over the grounds and into a cup.
I'm going to make a pour-over and use that time to really think about, okay, let me take deep breaths while I'm doing the circular pour with the water. Let me use this ritual that is a necessary part of my daily life as a reflection back to me of like, hey, how are you doing? Like, actually, let me check in with myself. And in that way, I have then the energy to check in with others to create the community care.
That's really interesting to think about it that way, because I think a lot of times people, when they think about daily preparation of anything, speed and efficiency is the way to go. And, that's what the way to reduce stress is to make everything faster. And like, it's just really nice to think about the time it takes to make something more slowly might actually give you some breathing space at the start of your day.
Definitely. We live in a world that's very fast paced. And for me, the time that I spend making my coffee just gives me at least 3 to 5 minutes of just, I'm not doing anything else other than this thing. Coffee has always kind of been that symbolic thing for me because it's a ritual. It's like, it's something I partake in every single day. In Ethiopia, when they began doing coffee ceremonies, that's what the women did. Like, the women provided the coffee, and it is a moment to literally slow down, sit together, take time. Don't worry about the work that has to be done. We're going to have this moment, enjoy, and then we're going to go out into the world. You're caring for yourself in a way. There's communal care there. There's self-care there. And then you're prepared to then go and do what is necessary and then come back and hopefully have a reprieve again. And if not, at least that morning ritual, or honestly, whenever you consume coffee, is that reprieve time.
That's so interesting. It's something I'm definitely going to think about, because I know sometimes I, start to make the coffee, then trying to do a bunch of things at once, and, the water's already boiled, and I'm going to have to come back and start the water again, or, I've poured it and forgotten and walked away. But just to sit with it and spend time making it happen, I think I will enjoy the coffee more, because I might drink it while it's hot. And also just, like you said, taking that time of being present instead of like, what other 5 things can I do while I'm making coffee?
Right. It's like, how much can you fit in between the time that the water warms up? It's like that. We don't have to do that. Like, we've almost been conditioned to believe we have to do that. But when we really step back, what is required of us in just that short amount of time? Nothing. Like nothing. Just to do the task at hand, and then hopefully enjoy the fruits of your labor.
I'm speaking with Korie Griggs of the Color of Coffee Collective. We'll return to our conversation after a short break. Korie will also walk us through the steps of making a pour-over coffee, which she demonstrated here at the radio station using her mobile coffee brewing kit. Stay with us. Support for Earth Eats comes from Columbus, Indiana, overflowing with everywhere art and unexpected architecture. Tickets for guided architecture tours and trip planning at columbus.in.us. Kate Young here. This is Earth Eats. We're back with Korie Griggs of the Color of Coffee Collective. One of the other characteristics of the third wave of coffee consumption includes people bringing some of the specialized grinding and brewing instruments into their homes and purchasing those single-origin beans from their favorite roasters. Over time, Korie has built up a well-equipped home coffee bar with her favorite manual brewing tools. But she doesn't let herself get too rigid about it. Here's more from our conversation. What I would really like to talk about now is a little bit of, I guess, nerding out on coffee. When I really stop to think about everything that's involved in making the perfect cup of coffee, it's pretty complicated. It can be pretty intense.
It can be.
The coffee bean, where and how it's grown, how it's processed, the roast, the freshness, the storage, the grind, the temperature of the water, all these things.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you have a kind of tune into yourself and more of a flexible kind of approach. It doesn't sound like you have this coffee must be made in this certain way or else I'm not drinking it,
Yeah, I definitely do have the technical skills. I just don't always implement them. And I think a lot of that comes just from my creative side of just being I still want to play. I want to see if I changed this up a little bit, what would occur, what would happen. But when I even think about my coffee bar, no, I do have everything that you mentioned. I've got the scale, I've got the, vacuum sealed storage. I don't grind my beans prior to using them. There's different things that are just, I think, now ingrained in me from being trained in specialty coffee. But I'm a big advocate of there's no wrong way to make your coffee. If that is how you enjoy it, live your best life and enjoy it, because you're not doing anything wrong. It's not the same as in cooking where you can just burn something and it's not edible anymore. I mean, I definitely recommend your water should be a certain temperature if you want it to actually be brewed and hot. But when it gets into the really technical of no, it should only be 21 grams and 350 grams of water. And, all these I think about pour over ratios. Yeah, those ratios are there for a reason because they worked for a person. Who's to say you can't try your own ratio and it actually works better for you or this type of coffee, because even when we try out different coffees from different places, who knows if that ratio that we used on a coffee from Congo is going to be the same when we try this Ecuadorian bean. Those are different parts of the world. Those are, and so that's the way that I think about it of I have my ratios that I do use. Just, all right, I know how much coffee this is going to make, so let me just go ahead and do that. But sometimes if it tastes just a little different to me, then I'm what if I tried tuning down the water a bit? What if I slowed my brew method and just waited while the coffee bloomed, which is what happens when you very first pour the water over? What if I let the bloom process be longer? There's room to play in coffee that doesn't have to make it be so intimidating. Because I was very intimidated by making coffee when I very first was learning. I was just you have to set a timer and have a scale and all these things that I was oh my gosh, I don't have any of that stuff. How am I going to make coffee? It's no.
And you've been drinking coffee all these years.
Yeah, so
somehow.
It's people have been making coffee for years and years and years without all that technical stuff.
Yeah, and I also know that for some of us, it's just fun
Exactly.
to get into the gear and get into the
It is.
specifics.
It's fun and it can be expensive. And, I love Fellow products. Like, that's just my favorite brand of products. And that's pretty much what my coffee bar is. So it was fun to, over time, start to be like, oh my gosh, now I can get like the Fellow grinder. That goes there. All right, next that I'm going to work towards is getting the Fellow kettle. Like, all of these things, figuring out what you like and what works best for your coffee experience. And there's something to me so fun about brewing coffee for others as well. When you get to have all those moving pieces, it's kind of, I don't know, it's entertaining,
Yeah.
You get to experiment while also serving.
And Korie was kind enough to share her skills with me during her visit to the radio station. We stepped into the station's green room kitchen area with her mobile coffee brewing kit. Do you often bring coffee making stuff with you if you travel?
Yes. Everywhere that I travel, especially like if I'm going to be like in a hotel or anything, I don't really enjoy the hotel coffee. So I'll bring my own. And it's usually either my Fellow setup, or I will sometimes bring like an AeroPress, which is super easy to travel with as well. I rarely will travel with my kettle, especially if I'm flying, because that's a lot harder to do. But if I'm driving, I just call this my coffee bucket and I load it up. And this is my vacuum seal coffee container, and I'll just grind it prior to leaving. This is a 3 Keys coffee. They're out of Houston, Texas, and this is a Costa Rica. And the process is yellow honey, so it adds like a natural sweetness that they roasted it with honey. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
So I just get my kettle going. For pour overs, I normally have it around anywhere between 200 degrees Fahrenheit to 205. I think right now it's set to 212, but I usually take it off prior to that. So this is the singular pour over set up by Fellow Products, and I guess the best way to explain it is it has the glass, double-walled glass that your coffee will then brew down into, and the top part is the pour over contraption itself, and that's where your filter goes, where your coffee goes. I normally let my kettle get around 175, and I will do just water to get my filter wet so that the coffee won't just stick to the dry filter itself. It just it preps it, I guess is the best way to explain it. Just a really simple pour over setup, and it travels well.
And so it doesn't really have that Melita cone shape. It's more of a, I don't know, kind of like a cup.
It's a flat bottom. So it's a flat bottom pour over setup. Yeah, so I just always do that. So then it kind of warms that.
It warms your cup up a little bit too, and then you pour that hot water out while you're waiting.
And I did forget my scale, but I feel as though I've done this enough that I can eyeball it a bit. You just start putting your ground coffee into your filter.
And what is the weight you would normally do for a cup?
21 grams. That's what I like to do. And then I just shake so that the bed of the coffee gets flat, and it is ready.
I also love this little almost funnel that you used to put that in.
That comes with the Fellow. Anything you get by Fellow, they're very thoughtful with their design. Even this is a Fellow product. The vacuum seal, you just like turn it multiple times. And it will start to turn green like that. And then it's vacuum sealed.
Interesting. I've never seen one of those either.
All right, and we will begin the pour over. What I like to do is slowly just do circular motions in the coffee bed. And we create what is called a bloom. If I had my scale, I'd go to like 55 grams. And I do what's called pulsing. So rather than just like endless water pour over, I let it bloom for a little bit and then take a break and then return to it once the bloom has settled a bit. Favorite things about this is when you pull this off is created to have a little catch. So you don't get coffee anywhere.
Oh dear. Yeah.
This one also, these little dots in this bottom container are also for measuring beans if you don't have like a scale or anything. So like their design is really
So it's
thoughtful.
measuring beans or measuring ground coffee?
Ground coffee. So like if you do it to the first dot, and that's the perfect amount for you to do just like a 1 cup serving. The design, it's the design for me. I love it every time.
So unfortunately, I do not drink black coffee, but I have some cream. I brought some half and half.
Then you're set. There's no wrong way to consume. Oh, that color is so pretty.
Yeah, that is. It does have kind of a honey color. It's really golden and beautiful.
And I will let you try this. Yep.
Oh wow, that's so smooth.
Yeah. It's the.
There's no like
Also,
none of that
this
like.
roaster is incredible. Wow. This is my favorite roaster ever.
So where is the roaster?
They are in Houston, Texas, and they ship all over.
So varietal, that is talking about the kind of plant.
Yes.
Okay, so those are the 3 things that are listed there: origin, varietal, and process. You know, I know with chocolate and wines, there are these different like notes that you're looking for.
Yeah.
What are some of the words that you use to describe things that you're going to be tasting in coffee?
So really interesting. I taste in color. So when it comes to what we call the flavor wheel of coffee, I'm actually terrible at it because I typically am like, wow, that tastes very, like this tastes very orange to me. It tastes like the color that they displayed on the bag. But in the flavor wheel, if you look at the colors, it'll show you that will represent acidity or orange or more citrus forward types. And I believe the reason that they did the honey process was because it's very citrus forward. So the honey is able to bring that citrus down a bit so it won't be so acidic to you. The cool thing about Three Keys, they actually created a flavor wheel based on jazz musicians and jazz music. So whenever they release a coffee, they incorporate a playlist that they believe goes best with the coffee. Yeah, it's amazing. So while you're enjoying the coffee, you're also listening to the curated music that goes with that coffee. So when I think about like flavor profiles, I always encourage people to say the first thing that comes to their mind. Like literally whatever's on the tip of your tongue, say it. Even if it's Starburst, even if it's something, even if it's a memory. Like sometimes when I drink coffee, I'm like, wow, this like feels like a day, like a morning on a front porch with the sun. It'll feel that way. So when it comes to flavor profiling, I'm very much in the camp of whatever you taste, there's no wrong answer. It's your experience. Three Keys does a lot of what I would call medium roast, and the purpose of that is to bring out the flavor the most. So T.O. is the roaster there, and he plays a lot with flavor profiles of like, ooh, like if we only roasted it to this degree, how much of that juicy flavor is going to come through and come out. And that's typically what you find in their coffees. I love honey processed coffees because it's naturally sweet.
Yeah, I am really enjoying this, and I also didn't put in as much cream as I normally would. And I just feel like there's so many different flavors coming through.
Yeah.
And the word juicy is never something I would use, but it kind of fit.
Yeah.
When you said that. I was like, yeah, in your mouth. Like I kind of see what you're talking about.
Yes, that's so good. It's kind of just like a science experiment all the time when you're brewing coffee.
It really helps to have somebody walk you through it, because sometimes if you're just on your own, you're like, so I tasted it.
Right.
What am I looking for? What? Yeah. Tastes like coffee, you know.
Yeah. I will always recommend like doing like a cupping or a cupping class. It's really fun, especially if you feel like safe enough to say anything that comes to your mind. I love the cupping experiences where people just go around and be like, actually, this tastes like, sometimes people are like, this tastes like burnt cigarettes. Like this tastes like, and it's interesting is a lot of times that's tied to a memory, because because our senses are so intertwined. And so I just love always hearing, like, especially when people relate coffee to like a candy flavor or anything, like it's just cool to experience.
I thank you so much for doing this.
Of course, thank you for having me. You can call me anytime. We can make coffee.
That was Korie Griggs, making coffee and talking about coffee. If you're interested in one of the cupping experiences she was talking about, there might be local coffee roasters that offer them in your area. It's basically a guided coffee tasting session. Here in Bloomington, I know that Need More Coffee has done them, and Hopscotch Coffee. There might be others. Ask around. If you attend, you'll learn a lot about coffee, flavor wheels, and maybe even your own particular preferences. And you'll likely have a lot of fun connecting with other people over a shared love for coffee. I'll post some links in the show notes on our website, eartheats.org. Note, this interview was recorded in 2023, and Korie Griggs is not currently working with the Color of Coffee Collective. Stay tuned for a story from Harvest Public Media about a new superberry that's grown in the Midwest. That's coming up after a quick break. Stay with us. Support for Earth Eats comes from Columbus, Indiana, overflowing with everywhere art and unexpected architecture. Tickets for guided architecture tours and trip planning at columbus.in.us. Kate Young here, this is Earth Eats. It seems like every few years, a different kind of fruit or vegetable becomes hip and trendy. But what if the next healthy superfruit was being grown by farmers across the Midwest? Meet the aronia berry, also known as chokeberry. It's native to North America, and in recent years, it's gained a following for its reported health benefits and potential market. As Harvest Public Media's Hector Alejandro Arzate reports, some growers say they've struggled to build name recognition and demand for the fruit.
Dozens of wine and bourbon casks are filled with aging beer at Boulevard Brewery's processing room in Kansas City. One of the brewers, Brent Cox, cracks open their latest creation, an Aronia Berry Creek. Cheers. The beer is ruby-colored. It smells funky and sweet. And the taste is
deep flavor. Kind of really reminds me of like the kind of wines I like.
For this beer, Boulevard partnered up with the botanical team at Powell Gardens to harvest their very own aronia berries, more commonly known as chokeberries.
From like a brewer's standpoint, it's like always wanted to use native ingredients. Just kind of adds to the terroir and just the impact of flavors.
Aronia berries also can be made into syrup, wine, and juice. But while they're native to the U.S. and grow well in the Midwest, they haven't really caught on here. In fact, Poland is actually the world's largest producer.
You know, it's been tough going for the aronia industry. I mean, the public awareness is not very high.
Dale Hilgenkamp is president of the American Aronia Berry Association and grows them on his farm in Arlington, Nebraska. His association estimates there are more than 1 million fruit bushes being grown, mostly on farms in Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. But while Hilgenkamp says the bushes are easy to manage as a side crop, he says they have fewer members in the association than 8 years ago.
We just haven't been able to get any market development, haven't been able to get any, larger companies on board to include aronia in their products.
Yet, this berry has a long and rich history throughout North America. Chris Van Meter is a horticulturalist at Powell Gardens, the source for Boulevard Brewery's berries. He says Native Americans use them as a food source and even medicinally.
When dried and used in combination with other plants, they make a good tea, a good jam, and are really helpful due to their large number of antioxidants and curing colds.
In recent years, researchers have also found that the berry's properties could help with hypertension, obesity, and other chronic conditions. For Dean Duvall, the berry's potential is what drew him in. He's a retired chemist who now grows it on his family's Century Farm in western Iowa. He says it's for agriculture and people.
It fits with the sustainable and regenerative agricultural movement, and not just the antioxidants. I mean, it's high in soluble fibers, it's high in vitamin C, so there's a lot of positives about it.
But more than anything, Duvall just wants more folks to know that aronia berries exist. He says consumers just need to be educated.
This is a native superfruit that they should be consuming. If they're out there spending money buying pomegranates or acai powder, they need to be taking a look at us.
Duvall sells the berries when he can, but gives lots of them away to friends, family, and neighbors. He says they're perfect in smoothies. I'm Hector Alejandro Arzate, Harvest Public Media.
Bison were slaughtered nearly to extinction in the United States, with just a few hundred remaining by the early 1900s. Conservation efforts over the decades helped the animal rebound. Today, roughly 450,000 plains bison live in the U.S., in national parks, conservation land, and on tribal lands where they're known as buffalo. And as Harvest Public Media's Anna Pope reports, more and more tribal groups want to reestablish buffalo herds.
In northern Oklahoma, the Pawnee Nation has long wanted buffalo to return. Jessica Evans remembers her dad hoping for that when she was young.
It's always been an important part of, Tanaha, that's what our name for bison. That's always been an important part of his identity. He thought that we should have them for a long time, and he's not alone.
Today, Evans is the Pawnee Nation's agriculture land manager and outreach coordinator. She says they're working to clear about 300 acres of land for a herd they hope will arrive this year. And it's no small task.
The answer is a lot of things go into trying to prepare for this because we don't want to make mistakes. This is really important.
Evans says they have been researching, attending trainings, field days, and more to make ready for the buffalo. The Pawnee Nation also joined the Intertribal Buffalo Council. The organization, started in the early 1990s, has more than 80 tribal members. Its goal? To return buffalo to tribal lands.
It's real gratifying to see when we first bring back a herd to a tribe how excited or emotional to them to finally get buffalo back on their lands.
That's Irvin Carlson, president of the council. Its members manage more than 20,000 buffalo on about 1 million acres. He says the council holds educational events and worker trainings to help more tribes and tribal nations see buffalo return to their land.
Some of the tribes don't have herds yet, but are in the process of doing that, and we help them put together getting ready to have a herd.
The Iowa tribe of Oklahoma welcomed buffalo back to their land a couple of decades ago with help from the Intertribal Buffalo Council.
There they go.
Lyle Washington drives a pickup truck into a field where the tribe's herd of just over 30 buffalo roam.
You do it routinely checks, just kind of inspect each and every animal.
Washington is the tribe's agricultural assistant director. He's seen the herd grow to as many as 100 buffalo. Every year, a few animals are processed for the tribe's meat distribution program.
It's real fulfilling in getting to raise and nurture these animals and see them grow and thrive and then be able to bless our tribal members with food, and it's awesome.
While buffalo provided food for many tribes, they're also an integral part of multiple indigenous traditions and spirituality. The Omaha tribe of Nebraska welcomed buffalo back in the 1980s. Justin McCallney, the director of wildlife and parks, says the entire community is involved with the herd.
Just seeing them is a very powerful and moving thing. We look at them as a holy animal. They're hube, holy. So we do our best to take care of them every day. And, in return, even to this day, they still take care of us.
And he says getting to watch each new generation of the tribe interact with the herd is priceless. For Harvest Public Media, I'm Anna Pope.
Harvest Public Media is a collaboration of public media newsrooms in the Midwest and Great Plains. Find more at harvestpublicmedia.org. That's it for the show this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. The Earth Eats team includes Eobon Binder, Alexis Carvajal, Alex Chambers, Toby Foster, Luann Johnson, Leo Pies, Daniela Richardson, Samantha Schemenauer, Peyton Whaley, and we partner with Harvest Public Media. Special thanks this week to Korie Griggs and the Color of Coffee Collective. Earth Eats is produced and edited by me, Kate Young. Our theme music is composed by Aaron Toby and performed by Aaron and Matt Toby. Additional music on the show comes from Universal Production Music. Our executive producer is Eric Bolstridge.
Hoosier Spirits is a new documentary from WTIU and Indiana Public Media that explores Indiana's deep distilling roots and visits distilleries across the state to get a glimpse at the future of Hoosier Spirits. Learn more, check out a map of Indiana distilleries, and get the recipe for our exclusive cocktail at WTIU.org/Hoosier Spirits.